Hello, geography students, online class. This is Ms. Robinson speaking, and I just want to, for the first time, I'm going to be doing this audio with a PowerPoint, and it's not going to be more than 15 minutes because I know I'm going to lose you after that. So please bear with me. This is the first time that I ever do this. We are going to go fairly quickly, but I suggest that you look at it quite a bit yourself afterwards, or maybe you've already done so. So Africa, here it goes. We're going to go really quickly through the first slides and a little bit more rapidly through the next ones. Okay. This is just a satellite image of Africa. You can see the Sahara Desert in the north and the largest lake further in the east. That is Victoria Lake, Lake Victoria. And here's a political map, okay, updated with South Sudan included because that is a new country. And you'll want to read through this by yourself because we have to get to other items, okay? But, I mean, really check out this page. It is pretty amazing if you ask me, and even read over all the points. Picture of fantastic Victoria Falls between Zambia and Zimbabwe. A lot of people think that, the only rich and massive empire was in Egypt. And people even consider Egypt its own special place, but it's actually only one of 55 African countries. And check out all these other empires that were massive, advanced, and amazing. One of the key pieces of geography here is Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest freestanding mountain in the world, which is to say that it is not part of a mountain chain. It is actually a volcano. You can kind of see the level top there. This is a sky view of it. Okay, during the European Middle Ages, actually Timbuktu was one of the best and biggest place for scholars to meet. There are universities that were founded there that are older than Harvard or Oxford. Seems to be a stereotype of the African continent that, there weren't these scholarly locations other than Alexandria in Egypt. But check this out. Here's where they were located, and you'll note in modern-day Mali that Timbuktu is actually spelled Tombouctou, because that is the most recent spelling of it. Here's a picture of Timbuktu in Mali, and that is a massive, massive clay mosque right behind these individuals. And I just want to point out that, yes, many people across the continent do wear this traditional African clothing, and this is called batik. But the vast majority of African persons actually wear clothes just like we do here. Here's another picture of the mosque. Here is the University of Timbuktu. Here is a photo of the Simien Mountains. Now you'll note about Ethiopia, you want to make note about Ethiopia that it is actually the only country in Africa that was never colonized by any power. The Italians sure did try, but this is the most mountainous country in Africa, and actually at the point of European colonization, they had many powerful princedoms that communicated across the entire land, and this also helped in defeating the Italians. A huge desert of note is the Kalahari. Here are some photos. Ha! Meerkats! Yep, this is where meerkats live. They're actually not cats. Here's another beautiful place of note, the Blue Nile Falls in Ethiopia. The Blue Nile and the White Nile both empty northward into the Nile. This is just a typical marketplace. There are a lot of such marketplaces around the entire continent. Read about Ethiopian coffee by yourself. Take a look at some of the major sub-Saharan African cities. Abidjan in Ivory Coast or Côte d'Ivoire. Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Dakar, Senegal. Cape Town in South Africa. You've probably heard of this one. Addis Ababa, capital of Ethiopia. Zambia. Victoria Falls again. Check out this 4-minute video. I think it's really interesting. If you've seen the movie Black Panther, actually this Devil's Pool was featured in it, in that, but it was the CGI in the movie changed it a little bit. Kinshasa, Congo. This is a very poverty-stricken place, as you can clearly see, but they do have a fantastic, world-renowned orchestra. Togo. Nigeria. How far are you going to get in that traffic? And this is real. This is in a lot of cities around the world. The majority of cities. Cameroon. Be nice to the hippos. Parc National de Ouaza in Cameroon. You will see the termite mound here. They can be up to 4 feet tall. Gaborone, capital of Botswana. Nairobi, Kenya. One of the largest cities across the entire continent. Warthogs and children have the right of way in the national park. Serengeti, you've probably seen such trees in maybe The Lion King. These are called acacia trees. And read about the present challenges as well. Now, what I really want to go into detail about is imperial and colonialism. Okay, this is what happened to the African continent, and actually in the vast majority of locations. So imperialism is this policy of extending a country's power and influence through diplomacy or military force. Colonialism is actually when more powerful countries go into another country. They occupy it with settlers, they exploit the human and natural resources, they even uproot indigenous religions, and discourage the speaking of indigenous languages. So how did this all happen to the continent of Africa? How did this happen? Well, you know, European influence was growing in the 1400s, especially on the island of Great Britain. I mean, they were an island that had a lot of lumber, and they developed ship technology. So they started trading with West Africans, and this is really where slave trade actually began. Now, slavery, of course, has existed in all of history. However, not on this scale, not across different continents, never before. And also, in other forms of slavery, for example, in the Roman Empire, slaves were able to buy their freedom. Their offspring were not slaves. So this was very different. The cruelty, the massive amount of people who were, forced off the continent, it's actually unimaginable. And we often think of it in terms of how America did this. But also it was persons in the Caribbean, South America, Central America, the Portuguese in Brazil. I mean, unbelievable, untold amounts of Africans ripped off of their continent. So what did that do? I mean, imagine what that would do to that continent. Let's not think of it just in terms of the United States. All right. Seriously, the removing of these underdeveloped this continent. Okay, just imagine if between 10% and 25% of Americans were forcibly taken off of this continent and brought, let's say, to Great Britain. Let's say another country, actually, Brazil. It's not exactly overpopulated. How much would Brazil benefit from the talents of Americans that are taken off the continent? Now, you still have Americans with plenty of talent on the continent, but what would that do to our economy? Things would just stop running. And this is what happened across the African continent. These scars are still very well in place across the continent. This is just an early European map. Take time to look at that. You'll notice on this 1812 map that, they really haven't explored the interior at all. Okay, so, why did this all happen? Why did the underdevelopment of Africa happen? Well, let's remove 10 to 25% of the population off of the continent, and then add the fact, so they are already at a disadvantage, but there's the Industrial Revolution going on in Europe at that time, and Europeans were growing richer, populations grew, because when people feel optimistic about the future, they have more children, okay? So they needed more materials. Rubber, gold, diamonds, lumber, coal, these are just a few items. Ivory, okay, that's still going on today. So, basically, a huge aspect of this is that the French and the British and, many other countries, the Portuguese, even Spanish, established these massive plantations, and mining companies sprung up. And indigenous Africans were enslaved working on those plantations and in the mining companies. Okay, so, this invention of the bicycle first and then the car, it really, provided this huge impetus for Europeans to increasingly extract from the continent. Just this endless supply of rubber needed to be tapped from rubber trees and exported to Europe, okay, and eventually to the United States and other places in North America and South America, all around the world, okay? So, these individuals across the continent were placed into slavery to extract this latex for bikes and then cars. Okay, so Europeans were not just competing against each other in Europe, but they were also competing against each other for places in Africa. Okay, and this competition against one another is called the Scramble for Africa, and it's also called the slicing of the African cake. Who is going to get more land? This all culminated in the Berlin Conference, and you can read about it right here, but note that this massive conference that took place in Berlin, Germany, no consultation with Africans occurred. No Africans were present or invited to the meeting. And there was little, if any, regard for, hundreds of tribal boundaries. How were the Europeans able to have power over almost this entire continent? Well, what they did was they came in, they had guns, and, they had the technology of guns and a lot of resources that they had already extracted. And what happened was that they pitted different tribes against one another. They gave one tribe a lot of power and another tribe not a lot of power at all. And these tribes, I must add, were advanced civilizations here, okay? So even tribes that had been friendly before this were pitted against each other. And this helped to secure colonial power, okay? What you need to watch this. This is incredibly powerful, this video. It's just 6 minutes. Watch the first 6 minutes of this 10-minute video segment, okay? It will explain what I just explained very well, okay? And this is a case study. Read through this. It's a great example, or great example of the terrible tactic of divide and rule, okay? Eventually, a lot of people think that Africans didn't fight back. That could not be further from the truth, okay? Colonial powers met incredible resistance. Eventually, all African nations gained their independence. This is how the African map looked and who controlled what. And then this is years of independence. Look at this. Eritrea up in the east gained independence in the 80s. Namibia in the southwest only gained it in the 1980s. This is recent history. Okay, I hope this made sense to you. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.